afternoon and welcome to Weaver Press in Harare, where today we're celebrating the publication of the memoir of Sister Janice McLaughlin, The Colour of the Skin Doesn't Matter. We've got a number of friends of Janice's lined up to talk to us today, and we're going to start with Chipo Chung, who is Janice's goddaughter. She was born as a refugee in Dar es Salaam and spent her first 2 years in refugee camps in Mozambique. She went to school in Zimbabwe and began acting with the Harare theatre group Over the Edge. And in London, subsequently studied RADA, and she studied directing at Yale University, since when her career as an actor has been as varied as it has been successful. Chipo, would you like to say a few words, please?
Good afternoon, I'm Chipo Chung, and I'm honoured to be here at the launch of Janice's book. When you read this book, Janice's voice comes through as if you are listening to her. I've missed her over these past months, but reading her memoir was like talking to her, gaining insight through all the humour, liveliness and humanity that made Janice Janice. There were many sections I could have read from, but I thought I would read some passages from her postscript. She details throughout the book the many important occasions when she was called on to speak. She was highly skilled at talking extempore and also worked hard at finessing the thoughts, words and phrases of her planned speeches and keynotes. I imagine, were she here, at the launch of her memoir, she would have read something like this. Not many young women took the road to religious life, even back in the 1950s and early 1960s, when vocations to be sisters, brothers, and priests flourished. From an early age, however, I knew that I wanted something different from my parents and my classmates, something perhaps more exciting, more heroic. I grew up in a Catholic environment, reading the lives of the saints and wanting to follow their example, to death, if necessary. I was faithful to the practices and devotions of the church, together with my mother and my sister. We prayed the rosary on our knees each evening, accompanied by the soaring voice of Bishop Fulton Sheen, a well-known radio and TV personality. With my vivid imagination and dreams of becoming a saint and martyr, it is not surprising that I was attracted to the religious life. I dreamt of fields afar, where intrepid explorers and missionaries encountered exotic and dangerous cultures, so different from the very narrow and safe world in which I grew up. This is the life for me, I thought, when I saw photos of Maryknoll sisters riding on horseback through remote mountain villages in Guatemala, or living on a houseboat on the Beni River in Bolivia. I never looked back. Although I found some of the medieval practices in our religious training bizarre, I believed they were meant to toughen us and prepare us for a rigorous life. I was somewhat superstitious, believing that if I turned back, I would suffer the fate of Lot's wife, who was turned into a pillar of salt for looking back at the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. This warning, crazy in retrospect, found fertile ground in my imagination and helped me persevere when others were leaving. I tended to view marriage and domestic life as a prison for women. The title of Maya Angelou's autobiographical story, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, struck a chord with me. My mother kept singing, but lost much of her own melody. My father's voice was also distorted as my parents struggled to bridge the vast difference between them. I also heard the tearful tales of Kenyan and Zimbabwean women who shared their stories of domestic abuse and infidelity with me. When I considered changing paths, it was not for marriage and family life, but for a political career, perhaps as a member of Congress in the United States. I never seriously explored this road, as I was basically content in my vocation and able to do many of the same things that I could have done as a single, independent woman. None of the steps along the way were organized or planned by me. Rather, like St. Paul at Damascus, I was constantly thrown from my horse and shown the way to go. While I was influenced by racist attitudes and structures in the United States, I have not lost my belief in the possibility of creating a non-racial society of equals, where the color of the skin will not matter. I look back with gratitude at the rich journey and on the people who have opened my eyes to see the world through a new lens. Each step has made a difference in my life. In the words of Robert Frost, I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Father Dieter Schultz. He's written about Zimbabwe in the 1970s and the work of the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace. Dieter is a Jesuit priest, a former bishop of Chinhoyi, and was an active member of the CCJP during the war. As his eyesight is now poor, his contribution will be read for him by Father David Harold Barry. Father David, also a Jesuit priest, first came to this country from Ireland in 1956. He spent 25 years in Silvera House, a leadership training and development center, wrote a column for the Zimbabwean newspaper, and has written and edited a number of books, including The Past is the Future, published by Weaver Press. David, if you would like to read, please. Thank you.
In rural areas of Zimbabwe as examples of what happened throughout the country. Her desire to be with the people was not an armchair wish. She lived with the refugees in the camps, often in the same hut, and later shared a small house in Tafara, a high-density, low-income suburb of Harare, with another Maryknoll sister. Later, she spent 10 years at Silvera House, a development training center, before being elected to lead and guide the worldwide Maryknoll community. Her heart was always in Africa, and at the end of her term, she returned to work as a facilitator and animator in training courses for advocacy and peace building in Zimbabwe. Among the many causes she took up in these later years was the exploitation and trafficking of women. Janice also shares with us her reflections on what she sees as the new role of the church in the modern world. While rooted in her Catholic faith and her Maryknoll religious family, she does not hesitate to express her frustration at the slow pace of change in the church in welcoming women into decision-making and administration. She tells us of her heroes, Julius Nyerere, Josiah Tongogara, and her own Maryknoll sisters who gave their lives in El Salvador. One person who deeply impressed her was Bishop Mandlakosi Zwane of Eswatini, and she quotes his words, "My fear is that the church will not be in a position to minister in a revolutionary situation because we are imprisoned. We only want to reform things, not radically change them. None of us is prepared for radical change. That is my fear." End of quote. I think this too is what Janice feared. She was not shy to be called a radical, and she tried to live this attitude all her life. She was disillusioned by the way the new government of Zimbabwe was content to enjoy the fruits of freedom without addressing the fundamental structures which continue to frustrate the aspirations of the people. The massive struggle that had taken around 60,000 lives ended with the replacement of one set of rulers with another. Nothing fundamental changed. Janice wrote her memoir 40 years after the freedom she gave so much for was attained. It was a partial freedom. Another revolution, she believed, hopefully peaceful this time, will be needed before people experience the freedom for which they still long.
Thank you very much indeed, David, for that, and for Dieter as well. Dr. Vimbisai Nundu will now talk to us about ZANLA in Mozambique and Janice's work in the camps, the schools, and in the media. Vimbisai joined the struggle when she was just 16 years old. Following military training at Tembue, she was deployed to Chimoio camp as a political commissar and later worked with Janice at Matenje school camp and after independence at Zimfep. She is currently Dean of the Faculty of Education, Social Sciences and Humanities at the Catholic University of Zimbabwe. Vimbisai, thank you.
Reading Sister Janice's memoir filled me with a deeper admiration and respect for this woman of worth. Although I had known her for a long time as a friend and confidant, I realized that I had not really known her. While reading the book, I thought aloud and said to my husband, who had also known her as long as I had, I don't think that I would have treated Sister Janice as an ordinary friend if I had known all that I now know about her from her book. With hindsight, I now believe that is exactly what Sister Janice wanted. She would not have wanted to be treated any differently from any of my other friends, and I'm the better for it. Thank you, Irene and Weaver Press, for publishing The Color of the Skin Doesn't Matter. I've learned a lot. My first impressions of Sister Janice were at Matenje, one of the ZANLA school camps in 1978. I had not yet fully recovered from the horrors of the 1977 Chimoio bombings, which I had witnessed and where I ran past an entire class and its teacher scattered dead under the tree which had been their classroom. I had survived by pretending to be dead, covered by my own blood and the blood of those dying by my side. I and a group escaping with me had almost made it out of the camp that had been bombed when we were ambushed by waiting Rhodesian infantry. I still had haunting memories of the agonizing cries of those who were bayoneted to death by a cursing jubilant white soldier. I was 18 years old then, and that was my last image of a white person. Then I met my next white person. My emotions were tested. It happened to be Sister Janice. I wondered and questioned how the ZANLA leadership could trust such a person to infiltrate our school camp. I was soon to learn why. Not from any voiced defense, but from Sister Janice's life of genuine love and caring for humanity. It was not the color of her skin that mattered. Sister Janice worked with Comet Fei Chung and with us at Matenje school camp in the teaching and learning materials production section of the education department. Even though she was not knowledgeable in this area of education, she was willing to learn and participate fully in all we did. She slept with us in the posters, the dug and thatch houses. She ate whatever we ate. She became one of us. She sought to understand through involvement our challenges at the camps and what would best help ease them. We were grateful for the much needed camp supplies, the teaching and learning materials, and the Sister Janice truck, which brought them to us in response to her fundraising efforts stemming from her fact-finding visits. About the military camps and military lives that she also supported, I lived in some of the military camps of ZANLA before joining the school camps at Chimoyo and Matenje. When Sister Janice learned that some of us had also lived in the military training camps before becoming teachers, she sought to understand the experiences and challenges of women in the different camps and how best to help them out. There were some problems and shortages in the camps which only affected female comrades. And her compassionate and listening heart allowed for the provision of basic necessities. She had to raise these basic necessities for those in the military camps as well, but for the women combatants and those in all the other camps. On the issue of media, Sister Janice sought to make a difference by using her professional skills. She used her journalism skills to teach, raise awareness, and correct misconceptions. Besides using communication and media expertise for raising donor awareness to the needs of all the camps, Sister Janice also kept in touch with the international media. And then teaching the global public about the liberation struggle and correcting the lies from the Rhodesian propaganda machinery. While she was with us at Matenje, she also started the camp newsletter with the students and teachers. This gave students the opportunity to express themselves and reveal more openly the problems and conflicts they faced in the camps. There was now a united attempt to solve the problems that the young and the old were meeting even in the camps. Solutions to the challenges were presented from the perspectives of both the students and their teachers. The teacher training students who were under Comet Fechung were also given the opportunity to participate in the writing process of the newsletter. The newsletter production continued well after Sister Janice had left because of her unsurpassed gift of teaching media and communication. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share about the friend who was a confidant.
Thank you very much, Vimbisai, for that contribution. It was lovely to hear from you, and we were very glad that you were able to join us. Now, for a little more on the ZIMFEP schools, we'll hear from Fei Chung. Fei has worked in education at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels, and was Minister of Education here in Zimbabwe from 1988 to 1992, before moving on to UNICEF and UNESCO. She's a joint founder of the Women's University in Africa and has been its chair since 2004. Fei wrote her own memoirs of the liberation struggle in Reliving the Second Chimurenga, which was published by the Nordic Africa Institute in 2006. Fei, carry on.
Thank you very much. One characteristic of Janice was her total concentration and dedication to the tasks she had to undertake. One of these was the Zimbabwe Foundation for Education with Production, ZIMFEP, immediately after independence. ZANU came back from Mozambique with 9,000 refugee children, as well as several hundred war veterans who had not been enrolled in the new army. ZAPU came back from Zambia with 3,000 refugee children, and also with a number of war veterans not enrolled in the new army. ZIMFEP tried its best to get the government to establish schools for these returning students, but the government very firmly refused, saying that they had no finance at all and no mandate to start schools for these 12,000 students. Meanwhile, these students were housed in mission schools and abandoned farms without food or shelter. Government would not provide food, shelter, or education. Janice was placed in charge of establishing the ZIMFEP schools and farms on her own by Minister Mutumbuka, the new Minister of Education, who as yet had little control over his bureaucrats. Janice wholeheartedly raised food and funds for all the foundations, from all the foundations and donors who appeared in Zimbabwe in the early days. Most of them had supported the refugees before and understood that the newly established government as yet had little control over its ministries. Amazingly, she was able to collect buns and other food, not really adequate for the large numbers, but enough to stave off starvation. Meanwhile, the staff and students began constructing shelters from mud and grass and soon had enough for everybody, although these were very inferior to what they had been used to in Mozambique and Zambia. However, temporary shelters and food were provided. These were 8 farms where primary and secondary schools were established, one in each province, where Zimfab failed to find a suitable farm. Um, 5 farms were established in Mashonaland and 3 in Matabeleland. Mufure College for War Veterans, Job Training and Education was established 3 years later. Schools were established as soon as possible. The teachers and administrators continued without pay, as they had done during the struggle. It took almost a year to raise donor funds to pay the teachers a low salary of 100 Zimbabwe dollars a month, which they gladly accepted. It took another year for the Ministry of Education to recognize these schools for the salaries for the teachers. Meanwhile, the key leaders from the liberation struggle, assisted by providing resettlement land and donors provided funds for the purchase of farms on which to build the schools. These 3 resettlement farms were donated to Zimbabwe, 2 in Mashonaland Central and 1 in Matabeleland South. 9 others were purchased through donor funds. Construction started, even though at the time the ministry had not decided to recognize the schools and the students. Bureaucratic opposition continued for a few years. Janice's character profile was always to try and win support from everyone, whether they were liberation fighters or Rhodesian bureaucrats. She was able to win over everybody slowly but surely. Eventually, the schools were registered as private schools. 80% of Zimbabwe's post-independence schools were registered as private schools controlled by parents and communities. Private school teachers are paid by the Ministry of Education, but food and administration had to be covered by the responsible authority. The schools were constructed through Zimfab's appointment of a qualified and experienced construction engineer, utilizing community, war veterans, and students to construct the schools. These large schools were eventually registered by the Ministry of Education. One of the early volunteer groups helping Zimfab was Development Aid from People to People, DAPP. These were adults and students from Denmark who lived and worked under these difficult conditions together with the war veterans and refugees. They were an important symbol, but white people could live and work with Africans.
Sure.
They eventually left as they lacked technical skills. Janice played a critical role in establishing Zimfab as a practical, though imperfect, model of education with production. Zimfab was established in the middle of the dissident challenge and became victim of both the dissidents and the security forces. JZ Moyo Guard, in charge of the building materials for schools, was killed by dissidents. Headmaster Mutobi at Bongolo was arrested by security forces, suspected of feeding dissidents. Janice immediately flew to Bulawayo. and managed to get him released. That was Janice. She immediately freed him. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Faye, for joining us and for making that wonderful contribution to our discussion. Now, for those of us who know little about the work of the Maryknoll Sisters of St. Dominic in Africa, and specifically in Zimbabwe, we turn to Sister Cheong Pak, who was assigned to Zimbabwe 22 years ago, now lives in Norton to the west of Harare, where she runs a youth learning center focusing on education and life skill programs for the community there. Sister Cheong, please.
Thank you. The Maryknoll Sisters of St. Dominic is the first United States-based congregation of women religious founded in the early 20th century for foreign mission work. Headquarters is in Ossining, New York. The congregation began in January 1912. Mother Josephine Molly Rogers, known as Mother Mary Joseph, was chosen as our leader and become our founderess. Mother Mary Joseph Rogers is seen as one of the co-founders of Maryknoll, among with Father James Anthony Walsh and Father Thomas Frederick Price. By the end of the 1920s, the Maryknoll Sisters were serving in Hong Kong, South China, Manchuria, Philippines, and the Hawaii Island. The multicultural dimension of the congregation was established over the years, with the women entering from Austria, Canada, China, England, Hong Kong, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Korea, and Trinidad. In the 1970s, the sister began ministry in Indonesia, Southern Sudan, and Bangladesh, and later respond to the needs of refugees in El Salvador, Guatemala, Mozambique, Somalia, Sudan, Thailand, and the Vietnamese in Hong Kong. Today, Maryknoll Sisters work in 18 different countries around the world and country to make God's love visible worldwide by responding to the world's needs such as immigration, trafficking of persons, the care of creation, the effect of HIV on communities, trauma healing, etc. Maryknoll Sisters in Africa. Sisters are assigned in May 1948 to Africa, specifically Tanganyika. Before Tanzania, the country was known as Tanganyika. First sisters who are missioned
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Make sure I'm in the right place.
Please.
Down here.
Margaret Rose Winkleman and John Curse and Mary Ball did health work, cascati, and girls' education. Currently, sisters are doing spiritual direction, seminar, and training. Livelihood project, early childhood education, and young women's training center. In 1969 to 1977, sisters assigned to ministry on Kenya coast in Machako and Nairobi. These assignments are among Maryknoll's first expansion beyond Tanzania borders, where Maryknoll Sisters first began their mission presence in Africa. Sister Janice McLaughlin was assigned to Kenya in 1969, and she worked in Catholic Secretariat Office as a communication coordinator. She went to Rhodesia in 1977 in the midst of war at the request of Rhodesian Catholic Bishop Justice and Peace Commission to serve as press secretary. In 1979, she was assigned to Rhodesia, Mozambique, to work as press secretary for the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace. In 1980, Meridional Zimbabwe region was formed. Sister Frank Corbett came followed by Joe Colma, Cassie Bobby, Patty Startup, Janet Miller, Catherine Shannon, Joe Rucker, Jung-Mi Lee, and Chiyoung. Our ministry varies from education, pastoral ministry, economic development, human rights, women's advocacy, human trafficking, psychotherapy in Zimbabwe. Janice was master seed for our Zimbabwean region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Chiyoung. I'm sure that a lot of that was new to most of us, and we're very glad to have learned a lot more about the work of the Meridional Sisters of St. Dominic. My next question is going to be, what was Janice like to work with? And to answer this question, we were hoping, I'm just saying we were hoping to welcome Sister Jung-Mi. I see she's just arrived in the discussion, so I'll welcome her. Jung-Mi Lee also was assigned to Zimbabwe 22 years ago, like Sister Chiyoung, and lived and worked with Janice in Harare. She's had various tasks during her time here. She was a co-director of the Dance Trust of Zimbabwe's outreach program, and she worked as a psychotherapist with the adult rape clinic here. She is currently with the Meridional Integration Community in Chicago. And Jung-Mi, we welcome you back to Harare. Please join us now.
Hi.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for having this time. And then I'm sorry. I can be very emotional right now. Okay. It was my great privilege to live with Janice for 21 years. I learned so much from her, and I treasure every single memories with her. And I've been thinking about what I want to share with you about Janice. And there was so many memories came to me, and I don't know how to start and how to end. But what I love most and appreciate her is that her love for Zimbabwe, her love for mission, and her love for Meridional community. She showed through her own life how much she loves Meridional and how much she loves Zimbabwe. You know, as a young person, Janice McLaughlin is the big person, the icon in our community. And when I was told that I had to live with Janice, just two of us, I was scared. I was scared that how could I live with this Janice? And then I share with her my own feelings. And she laughed and laughed, and she said that, oh, don't worry, I'm not that Janice. You will learn about me and daily. So we live, and sure enough, she showed me the Janice that most people would not have experiences or not know her, that part. And then what I appreciate is, you know, we laugh together. And then the memory came to me every single, the end of the day when we came back from our work. We make ourselves comfortable and then to make a simple meal, and then we ate it and we just talk the silly things. And a lot of times we watch together the soap opera. I don't know how many, The Young and the Restless, we watch it faithfully and we laugh. And it was part of our relaxations from the heavy work. And she told me how to engage in conversation in midst of conflict. And it really helped me as a younger Mariners member. She never walked away. And she always tried to listen the new perspectives, new ideas. And she really wanted to learn more from me and from other people's. She never dismissed my even stupid ideas. I will say that. She just say, oh, that's a new idea, or, oh, that's a wonderful idea, let's try. She never afraid to trying new stuff. And I just took it as a granted. I didn't know much of the community life, but I just knew the life that I have with her, that appreciating the multiple perspectives. And she never looked down on me in a way because I'm young, because I am different than her. And she loved our dogs, Sekai and Valentino. And wow, she make sure that I received her beloved dog, the Sekai's picture. I just put it in a very nice place and then remember her through the pictures. She wrote a book, her first book, it's about the reflection book. And she said that she learned so much from Sekai, the dog and the cats. And then it was so beautiful to see their relationship. Even after prayer or watching TV or whenever we try to talk, the dog and cat were there with them, with her. And then whenever Janice stand up and dog stretching and then stand up and the cat follows the dog. So 3 of them marching together wherever she goes to the kitchen or back to her room. The Janice, dog, and cat, they were marching together. It's like in the line, and it was so funny. And I feel like, oh my God, it was so beautiful to see. But at the last 5 years, it was a painful moment for me because I saw her struggle. She knew and she struggled and she decided to stay in Zimbabwe with people. She made a clear decision to stay because she didn't want to leave Zimbabwe and people and going back to our center. She could receive the treatment early on, but she didn't want it. She want to stay in Zimbabwe with people. And that's my pain. I was so afraid to losing her. I believe that she has more to share with us. I mean, I wish that I could learn more from her. I wasn't ready. I'm not ready to let her go. Well, I will miss her. She wasn't just marrying her sister. She was teacher. She was a leader and she was friend. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say, but she truly fulfilled her life, and she just loved every single minute of her life. And I was privileged to witness her life and how to live as a Medina sisters and as a younger member of a Medina missionary. I had a great teacher and mother. So, and she support me. She support me, and then, oh wow.
Oh, wow.
It was harder than I thought.
Thank you.
John,
I will miss her. Yeah, I will miss her, and I'm sorry. I just lost my thought.
Yomi, you don't have to be sorry. Just seeing you again is wonderful after a long time, and the memories that we have of you and Janice together, living together, working together, with your animals together, the love you had for each other. It's very clear. And thank you so much for joining us. Several people have commented about how much they appreciated your contribution. And we just send you our love from Harare, and thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. And please stay in to hear what other people have to say, and maybe we'll have some words from you later. Thank you very much indeed. Whew, John me. Janice's work in helping trafficked girls and young women to restore their dignity and self-belief isn't particularly well known. So to fill that gap, we'd like to invite Dadirai Chikwete to say a few words. Dadirai is an adult educator with a keen interest in education and social injustice. She worked for 15 years with AFCAST, Africa Forum Catholic Social Teaching, and is currently at the Arupi Jesuit University in Harare. Dadirai, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Weaver Press, for affording me this opportunity. How Sister Janice contributed to the welfare of the girls who have been trafficked to restore their dignity and well-being. One could never separate Sister Janice from and with social justice wherever she was placed. Sister Janice 99, and it was launched at Arupe in 2001. Through AFCAST, Sister Janice was interested in the social teachings of the church on the environment, constitution making, and human dignity, women, violence, and conflict resolution, prophetic witness in the African church, Muslim-Christian dialogue on the social teachings, justice and peace, preparing for the Second African Synod, faith and elections in Africa, a critical conversation, the church and civil society, building social conscience for democratic participation, imagining citizenship in Zimbabwe, ending violence in Zimbabwe, political participation in Zimbabwe, faith perspectives on migration and human trafficking, women vulnerability in informal trading, in informal mining, and family vulnerability in Kenya, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. In AFCAST, Sister Janice created a safe space for the young girls by ensuring that they had a steady and supportive healing process individually and as a group. The restoration of their dignity and their future wins. Sister Janice's contribution with support from Merino and Hilton Fund for Sisters. She fundraised for the action and victim-oriented programs that saw the documentation of the survivors of human trafficking. She documented a short film on human trafficking that is on YouTube and Arupe website. She documented human trafficking through Lifelines, and there is a documentary to that effect. She collaborated with an artist, a Zimbabwean, Brian Nyawuma, who recorded a song on human trafficking. She fundraised for the education and the therapy of young women during programming. They had their fees paid to complete ordinary level education, professional courses, tertiary education, and continuous therapy. The young girls were empowered after receiving the psychosocial support and could face the challenges in their respective communities. Some of them were able to work and look after themselves as well as their families through the economic projects they were undertaking, which include poultry farming, cake making, dressmaking, and many others. The young girls received therapy at Arupe Jesuit University as individuals and as groups through trained counselors and therapists. When they recovered, they were able to participate in the anti-human trafficking awareness campaigns held throughout the country. The survivors moved to being advocates, and this made Sister Janice proud and happy. We facilitated the process of helping them set up their own organizations. One, Zimbabwe Trafficking in Persons Advocates, ZTPA, which is led by Mrs. Tabeth Masiwa. Tabeth, are you there?
We're just putting it on now.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay.
Tabitha is there.
She's around, Irene.
Okay. Carry on, Tabitha.
Okay, hello everyone.
Hi, carry on.
I'm Tabitha Masiwa from the Zimbabwe Trafficking in Persons Advocacy, an organization that Sister Janice contributed so much towards its formation. She and her partners, they identified close to 100 women of human trafficking survivors and helped them to restore their dignity. She was sourcing funds to help these women, the trafficking victims, to further their education, to start livelihood projects, and rehab them when she was glory, leaving all these projects unfinished. Indeed, to us, it was a great loss, because Sister Janice was a mighty woman, because even after her death, the survivors continued to receive funds she had sourced for their sanitary way. So as the Zimbabwe Trafficking in Persons Advocacy, we are so much saddened by her death, we are saddened by her departure, and we are sincerely hoping that may she rest in peace.
Thank you, Tabeth.
Thanks, Tabeth.
Then the other organization, Trafficking in Persons Advocate Network Trust, is led by Miss Mukai Muparadzi. Mukai, are you there?
Yes.
Carry on, Mukai.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, carry on.
My name is Mukai Mparadzi. I am one of the beneficiaries of Sister Janice's generosity. Currently, I am a social work student studying a Bachelor of Science honors degree in social work. I have grown up from being a victim to a survivor, and finally, an anti-trafficking advocate. I would like to express my gratitude to Sister Janice for strengthening me through the journey of my education. And it's a big loss, and we are very saddened for losing Sister Janice, and may her soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukai. Thank you, Tabeth. And Dadarai, thank you very much indeed for joining us and for sharing your experiences with Janice. Thank you to all three of you.
Thank you.
Finally, let's hear from Ranga Zinyemba, the Rector and Vice Chancellor of the Catholic University of Zimbabwe. Ranga's friendship with Janice dates back to 1977. She had just arrived in Rhodesia to work as press secretary for the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace. And Ranga, who was then president of the Students' Union at the University of Rhodesia, had been issued with a restriction order under the Law and Order Maintenance Act. Janice recalls in the book how she was asked to buy bus and airline tickets that would enable Ranga to leave the country from Bulawayo, where he wouldn't easily be identified. And she writes, "I remember sweating as I purchased the ticket, certain that the clerk at the airline office knew what I was doing and that the police would swoop down and arrest me for insisting a supporter of terrorism." Ranga, tell us more.
Good afternoon. I'm grateful for this opportunity to give an overview of Sister Janice McLaughlin. Colleagues who have spoken before me from various perspectives and historical periods of Janice's life have adequately covered her contributions as an educator, a liberation theologian, a community and organizational development practitioner, a trainer, a facilitator, a door opener for others to see and seize opportunities for personal growth and development, a leadership succession planner and practitioner, a relentless fighter for justice and fighter for the poor, and a lifelong learner who was always open to new ideas and new ways of ministering to others. Firmly anchored in the charism of Maryknoll sisters, Janice straddled both the pre- and post-Vatican II worldviews and showed that there are endless possibilities, not only for the religious like herself, but indeed for everyone to effectively serve and minister to the needs of others if one uses as starting point the expressed needs of the people rather than the needs of the service provider. Her story about the people of remote Binga district in Zimbabwe regarding their needs, as opposed to what she and her colleagues at Silvera House had envisaged, is very revealing. Janice interrogated tradition, she embraced tradition, she experimented, she learned, she put into effect what she learned. She looked at issues using multiple lenses. She was honest about her own feelings, including her shortcomings. In her memoir, she talks about her own naivety and inexperience on occasion, and openly expresses the pain and shame she felt when she feared she had placed others in danger, especially after her diary was read in court in Zimbabwe and after the publication Propaganda War in Rhodesia was leaked before revisions were finalized. Let me now, from a personal perspective, say a few words about friendship, Janice's capacity for initiating, cultivating, and sustaining friendships. If I were to ask my students at university, to analyze characters or persons mentioned in Janice's memoir, the people she interacted with in her ubiquitous life, the students would ask, where do we begin? The memoir is replete with hundreds of people whom Janice worked with and befriended, all the way from elementary school, high school, university, Marine Training Center, and in Africa, various countries, Tanzania, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mozambique. When she came to Rhodesia, 1.5 weeks after her arrival, I was on the run after being issued with a restriction order by the government, and I could have been sentenced to death for assisting the guerrillas who were fighting for liberation. Janice was therefore rightly worried when she purchased the ticket, after she was sent to purchase the ticket for me to leave the country by the Justice and Peace Commission. Just before I left, Janice's brother Arthur and Dita Scholes came to the place where I was hiding and conducted a marriage ceremony between myself and Alice. And that was the beginning of a friendship that was to last until Janice's death on March 7, 2021. After she was deported from Rhodesia, Janice visited me in Sheffield, England, where I was studying. And that weekend, she was very busy addressing groups of organizations that worked to support refugees in Mozambique and in Zambia. After independence, and we were all back in Rhodesia, Alice and I conducted a proper ceremony, this time wedding ceremony, in 1997. Janice attended, and Dita Scholes was again the marriage officer. 2014, Janice invited Alice and I to visit her at Marine Center in New York. And in 2017, Janice was the guest speaker at our 40th wedding anniversary. She managed to analyze how Alice and I lived with each other. And that really brought us closer together. And then after she finished her stint at Marine, Janice came to work with us at the Catholic University with our research board and helped to organize a number of publications and also the International Conference on Migration. I cherish the friendship that I've had with Janice over the years. Every day in my office, I look at the wooden crucifix she gave me just before she left for the United States for the last time. May her soul rest in peace.
I would just like to thank everybody who has contributed to this discussion, the presenters, and to the over 60, 70 participants who've joined all around the world, many close friends who we've known from here in the past, and some who aren't known to us. At Weaver Press, Irene and I are privileged to have known Janice for almost 40 years, and were honored when we were asked to publish the book. We were very pleased to do so, and we're going to do everything we can, along with the publishers in North America, to bring this book to more and more people's attention. Janice's life, as we've heard, was one full and well-lived, and one that leaves memories in the hearts and minds of many, many people. And I think that memory will continue to live on. We've heard from youngsters who are studying now, who've been affected by the support that she gave them, and she's not going to be forgotten for a long, long, long time. That said, we can have a few minutes now if anybody would like to make their own contribution. I'm not a very technologically adept person, so I will probably have to unmute everybody somehow, which apparently is the host's privilege and duty. But if people do want to say something, perhaps they can either put something in the chat or raise their hands, except I can't see everybody at the same time for the raised hands. But let's try it. If anybody wants to say something, please do so.
Hello. Marie, you've got Karen Kazingisi.
Okay, let's take Karen and then Sunanda. Karen?
No, not me. I was just helping you out with the hands.
Oh, thanks very much indeed, Sunanda.
Carol Thompson after that.
Okay, Karen and then Carol. Karen?
Yes, I have a question, but first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Nundu for inviting me here. I've learned a lot about Sister Janice that I didn't know, although I thought I knew her so well. What a great woman. What great works. What I wanted to ask was that Sister Janice had a lot of work she did in Mozambique in terms of media, photography, pictures that are so historically important, as well as important to a few individual families who might have lost their children after Sister Janice already captured their photographs. Is it possible to have some of her works published, photography-wise, pictures that she took in Mozambique? I have one that she took and I treasure it so much. It's the only picture I have of myself, of my time during the struggle. But I'm sure a lot of other people would love to see their pictures, especially those that were kids in the schools that are now grown up, just for their own personal histories, but as well as for the Africa Liberation Museum. I think a book of her work, some of her works. I don't know who has inherited all that work that she did in Mozambique in terms of records, media records like photographs. And can that be found? Can that be published? Is that a good question? I don't know. Thank you.
It's a fine question, Karen, and I don't think we need to go into a detailed discussion about it now, but get hold of our contact details at Weaver Press, get in touch with us, okay. Repeat the question, and we will fan it out to people to see if there are any answers. And thanks very much for a very important contribution. I've got a raised hand from Jeff Felto and then from Chipo. Jeff?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you, thanks.
I just wanted to say a few words pertaining to what Ranga was talking about before he was cut off. Very ironically, when we're talking about indiscretion, when Ranga left hurriedly, I went to the Students' Union to his office and had to extricate a whole lot of very sensitive files and disappear them fairly rapidly because obviously they were pretty compromising. When we look at Janice's contribution, who was just quite a remarkable person all round, with the range of activities that she engaged in and the friendships and warmness that she brought to bear upon everything that she did. When she joined the Catholic Commission in 1977, obviously it was at the peak of the war, and it was a pretty dangerous time for the Commission. Sensitive materials obviously had to be fairly carefully protected to ensure that things did not get out of control too rapidly. They were obviously going to get out of control at some stage. But it's a pity that we couldn't have got hold of Janice's diary before the special branch actually raided her house and found that diary. Nonetheless, the crucial role that Janice played, in my estimation, was this. There was a debate going on within the Catholic Commission as to whether or not the Commission should come out openly and proclaim the Liberation War to be a just war and therefore needed to be supported. That debate had been going on for quite some time. And clearly there were two schools of thought, those that urged caution and those that said it's time to actually come out into the open now. We can't hide behind this any longer. We've got to actually now say that the Liberation War is a war fighting against oppressors to liberate the country, basically. Now, Janice had absolutely no doubt on that. And this is where obviously liberation theology and all the rest of it comes into the picture. When she was cautioned by Nick McNally, when she was being prosecuted under the Law and Order Maintenance Act, which fairly ironically, she'd just been writing about, having asked me for some information on it, and therefore knew how bad the penalties were for people that contravened that awful piece of legislation. But at that stage, when she went to the bail hearing, she couldn't restrain herself. She simply said, well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to remain quiet in these circumstances. I'm going to proclaim what I believe. And what I believe is that it is a just war. The people that are fighting are freedom fighters, and I will refer to them as such. And she got from the magistrate a comment that she was a communist and that she was an evil person. But the honesty that she brought to bear there, I think, was quite remarkable, to actually just simply say what she thought. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much indeed, Jeff. Good to see you again, and your points are well taken. If we have the opportunity to use our contacts in the security service to unearth past diaries, we'll do everything we can to get them. Carol, how wonderful to see you here after all that time. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm speaking from Arizona near the Grand Canyon. I'm 9 time zones away from you. And I just wanted to say that Janice taught North Americans that Zimbabweans and international comrades are leading the way and not being afraid to be radical, to speak truth to power. And she taught so many North Americans how to follow your example. Thank you very much. And thank you, Weaver Press, for staying the course.
Thank you, Carol. And well, I'm sure the thanks to Weaver aren't deserved, but we'll carry on doing what we can. And as long as we've got people like Janice who bring us their memoirs, we'll be lucky people, and we'll carry on the work. With that, I'd like to thank everybody who's joined us this afternoon. It really has been a wonderful gathering. We feel honored and privileged to have been part of it. We're delighted to see so many friends here on the call. And it won't be the last time we're doing this sort of thing. In fact, in a few weeks' time, we're going to be hosting a discussion with our dear friend Louise White, late of the University of Florida, who's just published a new book about the fighting during the war in Zimbabwe. Details will be on our website. But thank you all. And I think 1 or 2 people need to stay to talk to us on personal things. So I'll bid you all farewell. Thank you very much indeed. And those who want to stay, please do so. Thank you, Carol.